Hello everyone, this is Betsy from Ideas Times 2, and I have a tutorial for you today. I'm gonna show you how to make a soft cover for your junk journal. We've had a couple requests for a soft cover. Both Cindy and I have done other covers as well, and I will put a list for that down below so you can check out those if you'd like to. As I said, a couple people had wanted a soft and sort of poofy cover tutorial, so that's what this is right here. I recently made 3 gypsy journals, and they were more of the quilty type of cover, very soft. So that's what we're going to make today. And let's get started. So the first thing to do is pick out fabric. You may pick... The gypsy journals actually had an upholstery cover. This has an upholstery cover too. However, I did put chipboard in it, so it's a little stiffer. So I'm going to bend it a little bit so you can kind of see. So it bends. So this is still a soft cover, but it has a lot of structure because there's chipboard. It's cotton here, chipboard in the middle, and then the upholstery fabric. So it is a little bit stiffer. The gypsy journal had upholstery cover, cotton lining, and I had a piece of cardstock in between just to give it a little structure, but and it had batting. So that was very poofy, and even though it had upholstery fabric, it was still very soft. So today, let's see. I'm going to show you another cover that I had started. I started and I stopped. It has a couple mistakes on it, so I am going to make this into something else. But this is just a cotton fabric, and I had done cotton batting, a little cardstock, and then this cotton for the lining. So you can see what that looks like and see how flexible that is. Very flexible. All right. And today I chose wool, and it's hand-dyed wool. You can see a little bit of mottled color in here, and the other piece is the same way. It has little color variations in it. This is such beautiful wool fabric. It's very nice to touch, but it's thicker than a cotton, and so I think I'm going to make it a little bit differently than the cotton one that you just saw. So what this boils down to basically is there are no rules. You make it how you'd like, and as stiff as you like, as soft as you like. I know of other people who have done just fabric and batting and fabric and call it a day. This I'm going to put, I've got my wool. I'm going to put a batting in there to make it really soft and nice to touch. And then I'm going to also put 2 pieces of interfacing for a little stabilizer. And when I get done with that, I will decide. I don't think I'm going to put paper or a cardstock in the middle, but I'm going to figure that out after I get this all put together here. So that was kind of a long-winded sort of explanation, but really there are no rules. I just want you to remember, however you decide to do it is going to be perfectly fine. But let's get started on this. So the first thing to do is pick your fabric, as we had just talked about. And then the next thing to do is decide what size. So it's a smart idea to make your signatures first, and so I have already done that. I made signatures for my book. I have made it so that I start with the cover and then put the signatures in, and it never fails. I stuff those signatures too full, it gets too big, and then the book won't stay closed. It just pops open, gets that alligator jaw sort of look to it. So, resolved. I'm going to do my signatures first and my covers afterwards. That way you're guaranteed a good fit. So the way I measure for my journal cover is first to get the correct size of fabric. So what I do is I will take one of my pages, just lay it out flat, measure the length here and the width. Then you are going to need a 1/4 of an inch at the top, a 1/4 of an inch at the bottom. So add a 1/2 inch, because you're adding that 1/4 and 1/4. So add a 1/2 inch to your width, okay? Add a 1/2 inch to your length. That is your basic measurement, but of course you're going to need a spine. So you can see when I lay this down that I have all this extra fabric right here. That's because I allowed for a spine. Well, how do you know what size spine you need? The way to do that is to get your signatures together like this. And I have not taken a bone folder to these pages yet, so it is sticking up a little bit. So what I'm going to do, the weight of my cover is going to just push down a little, so I'm going to gently push down with my fingers. Hold a ruler up to the side of the open edges, not the spine edges. Hold my ruler up vertically. Take a look at it on the side and get your measurement. So I have 1 3/4 inches. 1 3/4 inches. That's just a very light touch, keeping that down. So 1 3/4. So now what I need to do is add 3/4 of an inch to my length here. So I've got, to summarize, I've got my length plus a 1/2 inch for the fact that we need our cover to be bigger than our pages. So add a 1/2 inch, that makes 1/4 and 1/4 on each side, right? So 1/2 inch added on to my length, and then add your spine width as well. So that in my case is 3/4 of an inch, and that'll give you the measurement for your length. For your width, you're just going to add a 1/2 inch, because you'll need a 1/4 inch here and a 1/4 inch there, once again, to make the cover bigger than your pages. So that is simply all you need. So you'll need that measurement, and I've already cut mine. Cut your outside fabric, your lining fabric, and the same size. Okay, now I'm going to get these out of the way. You're going to need a piece of batting. This is a thin batting. It's cotton. It's warm and natural, the thinnest kind that they have. And let me pull this back in. I usually make my batting about a scant 1/4 of an inch smaller on all sides. I sometimes just eyeball it and I'll just cut. But just a scant 1/4 of an inch or so on that. And the reason why is because I don't necessarily want that to show on the edges of my book cover, but if it does, it is no big deal. It's going to look fine. Just in my case right now, I think I'd rather just not have that, but it really truly does not matter. If you like that, that's perfectly fine. Then, okay, so now I have 2 pieces of interfacing. This interfacing is my very favorite interfacing of all time. This is Shape Flex. It's a Pellon product, and the Shape Flex is so perfect. It's good for sewing, for making handbags, and for making journal covers. It is very flexible, as the name would indicate, and lightweight, and yet it gives it some stability, your fabric some stability. So this is my absolutely favorite. Use what you have, though. If you don't have Shape Flex, don't worry about running out and getting some. Just use what you have. I would just, since I'm using wool, I would recommend a lightweight interfacing, but if you either have lighter weight fabric or you just prefer a heavier sort of feel, then just use a medium weight. But really it's up to you. And I'm going to grab my scissors because I think I need to trim a little bit off. So the interfacing I also cut just slightly shorter on all sides than the fabric. So let me just trim that. I thought I was all prepared. Alright, now this there are two different types of shape flex. One you sew in, and one you iron on, and I chose the iron on kind. So I'm going to run this over to my iron and iron it on. And where am I going to iron it? I'm going to iron it on the back side of my lining. And this is hand-dyed wool, so it is the same front and back. So I'm going to put that on the back side of my fabric and the back side of my, the back side of my lining and the back side of my cover. Just like that. So I'm going to take these over and iron them, and I will be back in a flash. Okay, I am back, and my shape flex is secure onto the back of my fabrics, my lining and my cover. Alright, the next thing to do, because basically we would be ready to put the batting in between and sew around the edges, and that would be it. But I have another step depending on what you want to do. So I decided to decorate my front. If you are going to sew anything on your cover, now's the time to do it. And I did decide on an image that I'd like to place on here. You may sew your image on. You may glue it on. I've decided to glue it on. And you can, what you could do to center that, if you want to do it right now, is to put your signatures in, even it all up, and then glue it down, centering it. Or you could just wait to the end on that, because if you're going to glue it, it's fine. However, if you do want to sew it on, line it up, center it, and then sew it on right now. I'm going to actually glue that image on, but what I decided to do is sew some lace on. So I'm going to sew that. Something like this. I will line it up carefully and pin it down. What I usually do is tack it with glue. So I'll just lift this up, tack it in a few spots, and then carefully measure and cut, and then I'll sew this on. And that's what I'll do down here as well. And as you can see, so then I will put my image in the middle. Bring that down, bring that up, and then my image will be there. So I'm going to go ahead and sew on my lace, and if you have any trim of any kind, if you want to put a spine color, like a separate color down the spine, you could do that now. Those types of things. So whatever your cover decorations, if you want to sew them, go ahead and do it now. I'm going to take, well, first of all, I'm going to measure and baste, glue baste, and then sew, and I'll be back in a minute. Alright, I am back with my lace sewn on, and so this is what it'll look like. It's very handy to have our interfacing on. That gives it some stability while you're sewing as well. Keeps it from stretching. So, yay! Yay! Alright, now we can go ahead and sew it together, but before we do, I would like to just talk about closures. I'm planning, if I can find a color, I'm planning on putting my closure, I was just going to have a side tie, so I will attach a tie here and then here and just sew them on, sew the edges of it, or sew the end of it on, so that I can tie it in a bow and have a bow closure right here. I think that's what I'm going to do. Since this is a soft cover, what I'm going to do, the reason why I bring it up now is because if you want to sew it in between your layers, so let's put our layers on. The batting is first, and it is a good idea to get all the extra strings off of that, especially if you're working with cotton. If you're working with an upholstery or this wool, it's probably not necessary because it's not see-through at all. But it is a good idea to get it off so that you don't have lumps and bumps where you don't want them or need them. So the reason why I mentioned the closure now, to think about it, is because if you want to sew it in between these layers, now's the time to go ahead and pin those on. I think what I'm going to do is wait. I'm going to sew around the edge of this and then sew my closures on afterwards. So I'll do that when I am done. But the next step is, what I like to do is to stabilize these layers together. You could just pin around the edges, but to sort of ensure that it's not going to shift, I like to baste them together, and by that I just mean glue baste them. You could also hand baste it together, that would be fine too. But I'm gonna, I'll show you the way I do this. Just random dots. And since these fabrics are very thick and the batting is next to it, I don't think we need to worry about spreading the glue around. It's going to be fine just to sort of leave that. Don't get too close to the edge because that's where you're stitching. So let's go ahead and put our batting down. This is going to sort of lock it in place. Alright, if you need to trim, like I maybe do right here, it's good to get that done. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Alright, the next thing, you guessed it, we're going to do some glue basting. So let's just get some little dots. Doesn't have to be anything special. Okay, and I did get some little globs there, so I'm going to spread them just a tiny bit, just in case it seeps through my interfacing, although it's not going to matter at all because that wool is very thick. Okay, now center it on there, smooth it down, smooth it down. Go ahead and turn it over, smooth it down over here. Okay, your edges should all be fairly even. If they're not, don't worry about it. You can trim those off later. So the next step, we're almost done. So the next step is to sew around the outside edge. I guess I forgot to say it at the beginning, but all these edges are going to be raw. You can see from this journal too, let me hold it up, that the edges are raw, and I took a zigzag stitch around the outside edge. So I think that's what we're going to do here as well. Straight stitch is fine. Little wonky sort of wavy stitching is fine. Other decorative stitches you may have on your sewing machine, all that is going to be totally fine. It's up to you what look you want. So I'm going to take this over to my machine, sew around the outside edge, and I'll be with you again shortly. All right, I am back. I sewed this together, and I decided to use a little, trying to get it to show here. a decorative stitch. So it's basically wavy, and there's like a little bow on each wave. So I went around the edge on that, and as you can see up here, I need to trim a little. Otherwise, I think it looks pretty good. I used matching thread. You could use contrasting thread if you'd like. Either way. Alright, and I've got a little string there. So I thought I would just cut this so you guys could see. You just trim it. Another helpful hint is not to put your stitching too close to the edge, just in case you do need to trim. So that's just kind of a little hint. I think this is pretty good. I have a few not quite straight places. All right. Okay, that's it. That's how to make a soft cover. So it feels, you know, to be honest, I think I'm going to use wool again. This is, it feels wonderful. This is one of my favorite wools. I purchased it recently, actually, and I might have a hard time parting with it. It's actually very pretty. All right, and so then my signatures will go in like this. And what I'm going to do, after I sew in the signatures, I'm going to sew them directly onto the spine. And then after that is done, I am going to put a pocket here. Either one straight across, one here, or a double pocket, something like that. I will actually, and then I'll probably put a pocket back here too, as well as the aforementioned image. So that image there. This is a design team project for GeckoGalz, and I used their kit, and I thought I kept the name right here by my side, but I don't have it, so I will list it down below which kit I used for this. But I also wanted to let you know, so I decided to use this off-white sari silk, and I'm going to double it up. And what I'm going to do, I'm either going to do like a little decorative sort of like this, and just sew it straight down, and then the same on the back, so that I can tie them in a bow. So that's the way I'm going to close this up. Glue this on, sew this on, and that cover will be totally complete. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then, but this will be the end of this video. The next video will be a flip through so that you can see this journal, and it will be for sale in our Etsy shop. Hopefully I will get that listed right away. So stay tuned for that, and you'll see the completed book. Alright, I hope that helped and answered a lot of your questions, and we will see you later, everybody. Goodbye.